Welcome to the Good Pod, where we talk about everything good, the good wife, the good fight, and right now we're talking Elsbeth, the Good Wife spinoff, starring Elsbeth Tassioni. I am here, as usual, one of your hosts, Jason Reed. With me, someone who always has panache and a great chin, Marissa Garza. Marissa, how's it going?
Cute. Thanks. I feel very seen. I would like to say that I have some panache as well. So thank you. Thank you for
I've
that.
al- I've always I've always said Marissa Garza, panache queen. You can never deny her panache. That's what I've always said to people about you. Always.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, we're back here talking about the latest in Elsbeth land. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. This was a lot of improvement for me for Elsbeth. I thought it was two of the stronger episodes of the season, so I'm feeling good about where we are right now.
Yeah, definitely. I would say an improvement from the last two episodes we talked about, especially, we'll get into it, but like the how they treated their guest stars and how they were able to really utilize the people that they had on and also advance the story a little bit. Yeah. Did you want to say anything or do you just want to dive right into it?
I think we can dive right into it. I think we can get into our feelings about the whole of the Elsbeth universe and get right to it.
All right. Well, we're recapping episodes 6 and 7. So let's talk about the crimes in these episodes. The first one was called Ear for an Ear. And this is where I learned plastic surgeons are like maybe a mob. I don't know. But we had Vanessa, who killed her protege mentee Astrid, who left Vanessa's practice after Vanessa gave her an opportunity to become a partner. And Astrid said, "No way, Jose. I am going to start my own thing and I'm basically going to make money off of correcting plastic surgeons who are not doing a good job." So this was not great. And Vanessa took this very personally. And at least from what we saw at the beginning of the episode, I thought this was the main motive for this crime, which ended up being Vanessa pretending to be a patient, going in to get Astrid to to unwrap her bandages, and then stabbing Astrid in the spleen specifically with, I didn't write it down, but like
It was some
something.
some Botox knockoff. I forgot what the exact
Yeah.
wording of it was. Some Botox something. It was supposed to be a Botox e knockoff type of thing.
Yeah. So what did you think about the crime up until this point? Because there is a twist that we find out, but up until this point, I want
You
to kind
know,
of know
I
your
thought
thoughts.
I thought the crime was really well done. I think this was probably within our because we our crimes here fall into a type of different types of categories. You have premeditated, we have crimes of the moment. I think this was a really good premeditated one. I thought that a lot of thought went into the crime and how
Mm-hmm.
she was going to pull it off, and it was very theatrical as well. With we have Astrid taking the bandages off and slowly realizing that it's Vanessa. I was like, that was very well done, and I love the kind of cinematography of it as well. We have the shot of Astrid getting stabbed multiple times from the back, for like we see like kind of a, I don't know, a glossy window. We kind of see the crime being committed that way. I thought that was all very well done. I thought of all of our criminals, Vanessa thought this out the best to me, in my opinion.
Would you put her ahead of Jane Krakowski?
Man, but Jane Krakowski did a lot of legwork, a lot of action for this. I think in terms of really thinking out the plot, I think I would probably put her above Jane Krakowski in planning and in getting away with it as much as she did.
Yeah, it was very, very methodical. And then she also, not only did she end up killing Astrid, but then she wrapped Astrid back up for Astrid to be found by a
Yeah.
staff member. And so that definitely took some thinking. She also thought about her alibi. Her alibi was that she was going to the museum and she made it really memorable that she was
Mhm.
going to be there. Not only did she get a ticket, but she flirted her way through security for sure. And it worked.
And she made sure she was memorable, right? She made sure that she made the guard remember her by, giving him a show and doing the whole thing with the dropping all the stuff out of her purse. I thought that was really well done. Just to talk about a little bit of our criminal and and the real world aspects of it. This is Gina Gershon, who's who's very famous for having a lot of these diabolical type of roles, and I did really enjoy what she did in the role. So yeah, I really liked how she planned it, how she executed it. I thought she was really well done in that way.
Yeah, it was good. And also because I couldn't really tell like I couldn't tell where her motive actually was. Like the show was telling us something. I could tell that something else was up, maybe, but I
And that's
wasn't 100% sure.
and that's very different for an Elsbeth, right? Because typically our motives are clear cut. We know exactly, but then they have in this episode they have that little twist that's talking about that we'll get into when we get there. But I thought that was very interesting that they gave her an added motive for her. I mean, it wasn't just about Astrid dunking on the oldies and dunking on her other plastic surgeon colleagues. It was more to it than that.
What did we think about how Elsbeth went about like solving this crime? To me, it seemed very classic Elsbeth. She knew right away. She was like, "It's Vanessa. I know it's her. I just have to collect the evidence to do that. So I'm going to do what I always do and put myself in front of a murderer in some sort of way and try to get a consultation." I still think that this is kind of like a tried and true to Elsbeth way. And I'm kind of like waiting for her to try something different, but it worked in this case.
Yeah, and I mean, it's in every case we've had so far, like, oh, I want to do whatever this specialized industry thing is. I want to get a consult for plastic surgery. Later, we'll see her, get a dance lesson from a dance choreographer or get a financial consultation. She's always doing this. She's always putting herself face to face with the criminal to number one, rile up the criminal, and number two, so she can kind of read the criminal and get a little more information about how and why she committed the murder. This way was so fun because you could see it coming a mile away, right? As soon as we found out that our criminals and our victims are all plastic surgeons, you could kind of see it in your eye. Okay, we're going to have at some point, Elsbeth is going to be sitting in this chair, and one of these plastic surgeons is going to mark up Elsbeth and tell her where she needs plastic surgery work. You could see it in your mind miles away from before it even happened. But it was a fun mechanic to play with, and it was fun that she took that and still wore it to the office of all the plastic surgery markings on her face.
Yeah, she was committed in that situation. Yeah. For sure. While she was there waiting for her consultation is when we meet Vanessa's wife. And Vanessa's wife actually ends up playing a big pivotal part in the plot here. First thing we learn about her wife is that Vanessa's wife is a dancer and she loves Coldplay. And Vanessa also thinks that Chris Martin is an underrated artist. I'm not. I mean, I love Coldplay. I love Coldplay, and I love that they do a lot of like accessible things at their concerts. But I don't know, like people know who he is. Like I don't know if he's underrated.
Did you catch Viva La Vida as it was playing on the stage? Yes. I caught it. I was like, wait a minute, I've heard that before. I was like, I think that's from Coldplay. And yes, they went into the whole Coldplay of it all. So yeah, I think Carolyn throws a very interesting wrinkle into this. I love that we got to meet her. I love that she was just kind of an innocent party and wasn't really she was just blissfully unaware of what her wife was doing. And I love that they threw that in there. I don't feel like we usually get sometimes we get this, non-knowing personalized. I can think of the Ball Boy episode where we got the criminal's son who was a tennis player who as well almost kind of helped us get the criminal by the end of it.
Yeah. Part of a big part of this case is Vanessa's alibi, which is the fact that she has orange paint on her shoes because there was a climate protest at the art museum that she went to, and people had been recorded already walking out with this paint on them. So she had paint on her shoes, and Elsbeth goes over and says, like, hey, the police are going to want your shoes, and if you can give them to me, like, we prove your alibi, like, it's all good. And Vanessa just like straight up walks out and tries to get these shoes. And Carolyn comes in and basically tells Elsbeth her entire medical history. Mm-hmm. Like in one breath, I've had this, I've had that, I've had this. She shows one ear as her plastic surgery that she's had done, but says that like it wasn't anything in comparison to all the other dancer injuries that I've had and surgeries that I've had when it comes to the hospital. I just would like to remind everyone, like, your medical history is yours. Like, you don't have to really like tell everyone.
HIPAA laws are a place for a reason. Take advantage of them.
Yes, for sure. Especially the cops. Elsbeth has done a good job identifying herself as either someone with the cops or the cop of the cops. Like, anytime there's a cop mentioned in any way, I would just, think about what you're saying. and who you're
Yeah,
saying
but
it to.
it's almost like a sports star as well. Like they like to tell you, or like a extreme athlete, be like, yeah, I got this injury here, I got this injury there. It's almost like they wear it as badges of honor in a way. Like I got
Yeah,
this doing
that's
this, I
true.
got that doing that. So I mean, in a way, she couldn't really kind of help herself. And I mean, the conversation was around plastic surgery, so I guess that would open the door for her to. But
That's true.
I feel like the door doesn't need to be open too much to get Carolyn talking about her different plastic surgeries. I think that's probably a thing that Carolyn and Vanessa could relate on, right? Like Carolyn loves to get plastic surgery, Vanessa loves to do plastic surgery. They're a match
Well,
made
and
in heaven.
I think a lot of the attention goes to Vanessa in that relationship. So I think like just having a door open a little bit, Carolyn's gonna like take
Yeah,
any spotlight that's shown on her. So, and I think
yeah.
Elsbeth like knew that.
I feel like Carolyn dancing above the consultation waiting room is a good way to point that out. Like, hey, oh, me? I'm not doing anything. I'm just here dancing. If you want to if you want to move your way up to the, to the dance studio where you can see me dancing, that'd be great. It's, Carolyn wants to shine when Carolyn can shine. You get a little sideshow in advance of also waiting for a plastic surgery consultation. That was a weird setup. I was like,
What?
what is the setup of this doctor's office? Like, he just got people
Well,
waiting for your
it's like
plastic
their
surgery.
house, right?
I,
Like
I think
downstairs
I
is
think
the
she does
office.
work. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I think she works out of the house. It's just such an odd setup. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
It kind of creeps me out if that's ever like the only place for some reason that I think I'd be comfortable is like if it was an accountant or a lawyer, but anything having to do with like medical, like dentist, no. Like even in the movie My Girl, when it was like a funeral home and people live at the funeral home and like there are dead people in your basement. Like
It
I
just
don't
seems sketchy.
understand.
Seems sketchy.
Yeah,
Seems doesn't seem above board.
agreed. Agreed. But as we were talking about, Carolyn and her medical history play a big part in this. One of the things that Elsbeth figures out is that a lot of the symptoms and things that were noted on Astrid's chart, that was Astrid in
So
quotations marks, like the fake patients chart.
yeah, the patient
What?
that Vanessa was
Yeah,
pretending to be, which was
yeah.
interesting. But yeah,
But we're all Carolyn's. Like they were all everything that she said and in order. Like that to me was a little too neat of a situation.
yeah, it makes no sense, right? Like, why would you, if you're number one, you've thought about this to this point where you're making a whole fake chart, and you're, for some reason, did you just grab the chart of your wife and change the name? Is that what she was doing because she has such easy access to it? But why wouldn't you just make up random things? Why be that detailed? uh, it seems like the details are what really did Vanessa in, because she did it in this detail, she did the whole red paint detail. I do wonder what Vanessa was planning on doing, how she was going to swear out her alibi if this climate change protest hadn't happened, because she didn't know that was happening. That was just kind of good luck on her part that this climate change thing happened at the same time she was supposed to be at the museum.
I think she was really banking on the security guard. I think that was her go-to plan. And because like when she went back to the museum and saw that this was happening, she smiled. She was like, "Oh, this
Yeah,
is
maybe
something
she was
else,
planning.
something different I can do."
Yeah, maybe she was planning on running into that security guard again on her way, quote unquote, out of
Yes,
the museum, so that he would see her again and
yes.
remember she was there. That makes sense. Yeah.
And her neck for some reason.
What a great neck.
So it turns out that because of this medical history on this form, Elspeth knows to look up Carolyn on Instagram, and there just happens to be this picture of Carolyn in her ears. And they call in one of the well-known plastic surgeons in the little plastic surgeon mob in New York City, bring in the old guy who knows his stuff and has identified that one ear was done by one surgeon, Vanessa, and another ear was done by another surgeon, Astrid. Da-da-da.
Mm-hmm.
So
Who
when
did
it
you
comes,
did you
yeah,
recognize the old plastic surgeon guy?
no, I didn't. Who was it?
He was the butler from The Nanny. Remember that show, The
Oh my
Nanny?
god!
I was like, I know
Yeah,
that. I was like, I
yes,
know this guy from somewhere. Where do I know this guy
yes.
from? And I looked it up. I was like, yeah, he's a butler from The Nanny. That's right. So yeah,
Oh
that was tripping
wow.
me out the whole time. But it's so interesting, this show and these writers. I think of the character from The Ball Girl. I
Mm.
forgot her name. Was her name Hannah? What was her name? the streetwise
Yeah. We thought she
girl.
was going to be reoccurring. Like, we wanted her to come back.
Yeah, and she was using all the cool lingo of the kids of today in a rather dumb way. And then we have these older plastic surgeons in this episode kind of taking the younger generation to task, where he's like, he doesn't know about this tic tac thing. I was like, these writers have a very interesting point of view of younger people and like how they feel about their attitudes and all the things they do today.
They might know their audience. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't.
CBS Golden Network.
Yeah, yeah. They might know their audience. But this is the key. This is what gets Elsbeth to like kind of know what's going on. She goes back into or asks Carolyn like, "Hey, like, did you have Astrid do your ear?" And she's like, "Don't say anything." But it's funny. Vanessa took out the recycling. So of course Elsbeth is just gonna take it.
They have no natural segue to anything. They're just like, oh, by the way, here's your smoking gun.
Yeah. What did you think of the arrest in this situation and how Elsbeth laid out how the crime was committed?
I thought it was good. I thought that, it was, we've seen this type of setup before, right? Elsbeth comes into the house with some other motive, and then we go, oh, gotcha. And then we get all the cops coming in afterwards to arrest our bad guy. Thought it was well done. I thought when she got the newspaper out of the recycling bin, I was like, I think I probably called what was going to be there and how that was going to be caught. So, much like a lot of Elsbeth, you can see it coming a mile away. But I did like the reveal. And I liked Vanessa being really cool and calm under pressure the whole time. Be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Nope. It went until the very last thing, like, as Elsbeth, like, puts the shoes down and says, see, they're custom made.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Vanessa made a really big deal when she handed over the shoes. She was like, you don't send Italian leather to just anyone. These are custom. And it has like her logo on the bottom. Mm-hmm. So it's really hard to deny that.
I'm just curious why Vanessa was so confident in the buying of the paint. Like, she had no way of really knowing that was the same paint that was used for the climate protest, but she was very confident in handing over her shoes.
I think she was acting at that point. I think she just knew, like, she just went to the store and bought paint. I don't think she did the research to find out that it was the same exact paint, unless she knew. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a house, so I'm not usually at like a Lowe's or a Home Depot. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. It is mentioned in the show that like a certain brand of paint is always at Home Depot, and so unless she knew that was a thing, but I think she just got lucky, and she was just really trying to like use her influence and her power to just kind of assert in that situation. But she got lucky that it matched, but then at the same time, Elsbeth was like, "Well, you couldn't really buy any other paint." Like, yeah. That was it. I did want to also talk about, before we get into episode 7, I did want to talk about the detective on this one. She was a new detective, Detective Edwards. She's very like data science based, has no time for chit chat. They're very to the book. What were your thoughts on her?
I thought it was an improvement over the other detectives because it was less one note, I would say, because a lot of other detectives are very one note, very like, oh no, this isn't it, I got it, I'm done. But I like the insults that she threw Elsbeth's way. She was like, I was like, oh yeah, she's like, oh, I've heard of you, you're famous, or rather infamous, I would say. And I like how she and Elsbeth kind of squared off a little bit. I remember there was one scene where Detective Edwards is trying to get out of the room and Elsbeth's in her way. She's just like, kind of like stares at her and then just kind of bumps her. And then in another scene where Elsbeth is trying to get out of the room, she just like takes time and just kind of moves her to the side. I really like the interplay between those two. So I thought that was a vast improvement between like a Detective Smullen, where we really don't get any other like character beats, where he's just like a crotchety old guy, but he's not interesting in any way. I thought Detective Edwards was more interesting. She's very much a data-focused person, a very metadata-focused person, which I think would have been interesting to have her on the episode 7 case, which used a lot of internet, used a lot of social media. So I thought that was a little bit of a mismatch here, where Detective Edwards only wanted to use internet data. She didn't want to use anything analog. She said, I'm going to catch this killer just by their online footprint. Which, right. There was nothing online footprint because this killer did everything analog. They did everything off the digital grid, which I thought was very interesting as well. That, but much like the other detectives, they don't appreciate Elsbeth for what she does.
Until she's gonna come for their job. But I did like that because I think it's also like, this may be giving the show too much credit, but like it's commentary on how Elsbeth works versus how the rest of the world might work. Like Detective Edwards is very much facts, data, things like that. And Elsbeth is working through intuition and gut. Like she just knew it was Vanessa at the start and had to kind of like work her way around to find the clues.
But I did love when Detective Edwards was like, yeah, we can't all work on gut feelings from from a woman who wears polka dots over the age of 15. I was like, damn. Roasted. That was a good one right there, Detective Edwards. That was a good one.
Later, Elsbeth like is explaining something and she leans into Detective Edwards' ear and it's like, my gut is telling me. It was very playful. It was very fun. Anything else on the crime in episode 6? I know we're going to talk a little bit more about what the movement in the Wagner case and stuff later, but when it comes to Vanessa and Astrid, anything you wanted to add?
I just want to call out the scene where they're trying to figure out how someone knows where the spleen is. And she has Kaya get on one of the tables in one of the conference rooms and just kind of like feels around Kaya. Kaya's like ticklish, and I thought it was a very well done and fun scene. I think these 2 episodes did a lot more work for the relationship of Elsbeth and Kaya, and we'll get into it more in the next episode. But I thought their interplay and their openness with each other was a very welcome improvement in these episodes.
Yeah, it was kind of funny in that scene when like Elsbeth was like, "You be Astrid," and Kaya's like, "Okay, do you need help?" "No, I got it." And then she was ticklish along the way. It was
and the other detectives are like watching them through the window of the room. That was very fun.
It was fun. All right, going into the crime of episode 7. This one is called Something Blue. This is where we have Keegan-Michael Key. Like he's showing up everywhere. He was on Abbott Elementary recently. Get your guest star check. Come in, do your thing, leave. I love it. He plays a very wealthy investment banker person, some finance bro.
Those details are very fuzzy. It's like, what exactly do y'all do? But I think you're right. Investment firm person is like, and we'll just leave it at that. I mean, it's much like Elsbeth not to give us like a detailed, character description. They're just kind of like, it's a money guy. Just go with that. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yes, and we learn at the beginning of the episode that his daughter's getting married, and apparently Ash is a very control freak. Like he has to know, he has to make all the decisions. He even decided basically who his daughter's going to marry by setting them up. Like he has a lot of opinions, a lot of things. And it turns out that this may be for good reason because the couple gets a wedding gift from a Lester Wilkes, I think.
Yeah, Lester Wilkes.
Yeah. And Derek, the groom to be, kind of tells this to Ashton, and he's like, hey, we'll talk about that later. Like, you don't need to talk about it now. And it comes to be that like these are people who may be criminals and may not want to pay their taxes and may also be on a separate set of books. But you're becoming part of the family, Derek. So I trust you with this. I'm going to give you this watch. Go forth. I trust you. You're in it now. Type of deal.
I kind of love the explanation from Ash. He's like, listen, bad guys, they don't want to pay their taxes. That's fine. They want to be discreet. It's not a big deal. Like it's just a thing we have to do sometimes. He's like, we're not just, and because of that, we're not just rich. We're dirty, stinking rich. And like this is a good part of what you have Keegan-Michael Key for. The way he delivers lines like this was so fun. And he's just like, I love the final line. He's like, listen, Derek, I'm giving you this watch because I know that you can be discreet, you can keep things under your hat. Boom, smash club to Derek at the strip club. I love that transition they made there.
That was good. Yeah, I think the line was, I protect them from undue hardships like paying taxes.
Yeah.
It's just so great. So yeah, like Derek gets this information and then all of a sudden it's his bachelor party and it turns out that Ashton still has a hand in this as well because he has a little informant, Capri, at the strip club who learns all of the things. Derek tells him all of the things, and to this, Ashton's like, oh, this is a no-go. You're going to have to die. Basically, like in 2 seconds, he just decides he's going to have to die. And his wife is all like, oh, we're going to have to cancel the wedding. He's like, no, no, no. We're going to have the wedding. Our daughter can survive a dead husband. And I was so flabbergasted at the ease in which this decision was made.
It almost makes you wonder, like, has Ashton done this before? Because he's very comfortable. He's like very down for it. And I love how his wife was also like, yeah, do whatever you gotta do. I just don't want to know the details.
Yeah, like don't tell me.
On it too. Yeah, like,
yeah.
I'm surprised she didn't go down as like a co-conspirator because she knows everything that's going down. And I wish we could have drilled a little deeper into Ashton if he's done shady things like this before, because he seemed to have no issue with it at all. We've seen a couple of our other murderers be like a little like, ooh, about what they did, but Ashton was so cool, calm and collected the whole time about what he was doing. He had no qualms about it.
Yeah, which and also makes me think that maybe he knows he's going to get out of it, like because he is so rich. Like, sure, fine, take me to jail, whatever, for a night, because or I can pay my own bail, so I'm not going to be there for very long.
I think he's just so arrogant that he doesn't think he's going to get caught. I think that's that's part of the allure of the character. Like, he's so stinking rich, no one can touch him in his world, he thinks.
Yes. But even like later when he gets arrested, spoilers, but not really, he's just so calm. He's he's just like walking away of like, oh, well, we'll figure it out. But okay, so it's the day of the wedding. Nora's so excited. She's like loving everything that's there because she's the last of her. Okay, this is the very real thing. She's the last of her friend group to get married. I have yet to get married. I'm the last of my friend group to get married. And I will tell you, there is like pressure. There's like a thing there that I could relate to with Nora, and she was just so happy. I don't even think she cared who she was marrying. She just was happy that there was a wedding and she could now be part of the I'm married club.
See, Marissa, that's the trick of it all. You want to know how you avoid all of that? You don't have friends.
Oh, thank you.
Well, listen, Marissa, we're on a podcast platform. We probably have a few male listeners. I mean, go ahead, pitch yourself.
I've said I've already said enough.
Okay.
But I appreciate it.
I'm just trying to get you married. That's all we're trying to do.
I mean, you do have a lot. I mean, you talk about marriage a lot on your other podcast. Yeah. So, like, if there's anyone I would trust in this situation, it would be you. Like, to set.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you want me to judge things before you get married, I could probably tell you if it's going to work or not. Yeah. Like, for those that know, I talk about Married at First Sight on my other podcast, and it's like, at this point, I've gotten addicted to seeing a couple and be like, not gonna work, not gonna happen. So listen, I will pitch my services. If anyone wants a matchmaking service, I'm here for you. I can look at your pictures, I can see how you interact and say whether or not you're gonna make it or not.
Or like a relationship verification service.
There you go. Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, I would trust you to do that for sure. But yes, so it's the night of the wedding. Like, I was not expecting this to happen at the night of the wedding. Yeah. Like, it is literally like the cake has been served and we're outside right away. Ashton's got a plan. He's going to basically make it look like Derek is drunk and drove himself into a lake at the golf course. Mm-hmm. I was so surprised.
You couldn't even let Nora get a honeymoon. Like, you couldn't wait until the week after. You got to do it that night.
She's still in her wedding dress. I did love like how watered her makeup was when the cops came. Like, she had like mascara running down her cheeks. It was very, very fun.
Nice detail.
But we have, so that is the crime as it is presented to us at the start of everything. But as always, we learn a little bit more. We could tell at the beginning there was something going on with their choreographer and Nora. There was a little too much flirting. Of course, like, Nora wants to have a dance. This is like a thing at weddings, is now that the bride and the groom like have their own themed dance situation. So she wanted to be part of the club, so she did this. You could tell, what was the guy's name? Like Flash Rob? Rob, because it's like Flash Mob, but it's Flash Rob. And he was definitely had some vibes with Nora, and then we learn later he has basically vibes with everyone. Like,
he's doing this a lot.
He's doing a lot of things. What did you think of the dance? I personally would not have paid for that choreography.
I mean, he tells Elsbeth like later. He's like, yeah, this whole like tap the watch thing. I do this is that's my thing. Like I get it's something he gives to a lot of his clients. Probably it's pretty hokey. It's pretty weird, but I thought it was fine.
It's a signature move, at least.
Yeah.
Uh, as per usual, Elsbeth needs to like figure out a way to get in front of the suspect. So she says, maybe I could use some financial advice. And again, we have people not thinking that Elsbeth is rich, but Elsbeth being like really rich. Although, however, all that she needed to say to get Ashton's attention was just the word lawyer.
Yeah, I was a lawyer. Like,
And he's like,
this whole
oh, I could, oh.
yeah, she's like this whole police thing. This is new. I was a lawyer for very powerful people back in Chicago. My divorce went well. I don't know if that means she kept her money or she got her husband's money. But either way, she was able to. She's in the money. She's raking it in.
Yeah. Yeah. I just like how she also dropped in that conversation. It just so happens that I'm really good at solving murder cases. Like, also, FYI. And you could see that like Keegan Michael Key's character shifts in that
Mm-hmm.
in that situation. I was like, oh well, I gotta go tend to my daughter. I'll be back. Yeah, he gets a little too involved. He tries to frame Flash Rob with this whole situation because he learns about the affair that Nora was having and is basically like, well, is that obviously there has to be some jealousy here, but don't tell Nora I told you.
It
But
was the
I need you to know.
it was the Russians of this
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah.
It was our way of framing someone else who didn't do this. But yeah, that would be the beginning of the end of Ashton in this way, because as much like a lot of our criminals, Ashton tries to do a little too much and gets themselves caught that way.
Yes, very much so, because that only gets Elsbeth to go to the dance studio and learn even more about Flash Rob. And it turns out that also, this is not Flash Mob related. I kind of just went somewhere else. I will edit this out. There comes a point where Elsbeth is at the country club and she's trying to get in front of Ashton and say, like, hey, let me show you how I know how this happened. And he, like, following him in the golf cart, they get there and she just wants to know, like, why the bottle was stuck underneath the gas pedal for Derek in Derek's car. But in her instance, when she was like trying to freak out Ashton, the bottle like slipped right out. And this I was like, why are we talking about this? But later it becomes key because we learn in this very roundabout way that bottles are not allowed to sit out at the country club, which then gets us a tour of the kitchen, which then lets us know that Ashton has access to the kitchen because he's on like the board and everything, which then lets us know that there is dissolvable tape that can be used in the situation. Because one of the things they've been trying to figure out is like, hey, Derek died of suffocation. He didn't die of drowning. So what is the situation here? But it was like, how many weird steps did we have to take
Right.
to get there?
It was very roundabout. And this whole dissolving tape thing didn't really serve the audience because we're left in the dark for a while. Because when he wraps the tape around Derek's mouth and then they don't mention it when they're at the crime scene, I'm like, why has no one mentioned there was tape wrapped around this man's mouth? Like, I don't know why they waited so long to give us that tidbit of information that this was dissolving tape. Because the whole time I was like we're not going to talk about the fact that he had tape around his mouth. Like, we're not going to bring that up. But yeah, then it became clear. Like, oh, okay, I get it. The tape dissolved off his mouth after he'd already died. That's something. So, and I liked also the fact that in Ashton's kind of arrogance, he doesn't really know Derek the way he should know Derek if his daughter is marrying this guy, because he's like, yeah, he was drinking beer. He loves that beer. She's like, no, he doesn't. He only drinks it because you give it to him all the time. He doesn't even like that beer. And she's like, what else did she say? Oh, he doesn't drive because he has astigmatism. So why would he be driving the golf cart? Which is like in the very big, like I was at the very beginning of the case, just like, wow, like you don't know anything about this guy. So you set this up in a pretty bad way because you know nothing about him for real.
Well, because it was to his advantage that his daughter marry someone who doesn't know a lot of things or could at least play aloof and things like that. So he was just banking on the fact that he would just like go along with it and use his influence. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Sometimes you get caught. So it turns out that dissolving tape is really not going to help the case in this situation. Even though they figured out how it all happened, they still need evidence. And so we have to find a way. This watch was part of the whole thing. At the beginning, Ashton gave it to Derek. This is in the family. It's pointed out in the dance, like he's using it in the dance. So we know it was on Derek's body, but they can never find it after his murder. So we have to try to get this watch. So Elsbeth goes and says, or asks Captain Wagner to give Ashton a heads up. Classic setup.
And it should also be mentioned that Ashton does mention Claudia at one point to Wagner. So Ashton already knows Wagner and his wife. They have a relationship already, which was an interesting little crumb to leave for our overarching Wagner storyline, which is interesting. So Wagner, has the ability to kind of make this call because he knows Ashton already in a personal way.
Money speaks.
Money rules the world.
Yeah. So he calls and basically says, like, hey, if we have to go, we might have to go back into the pond and get this watch. We'll get it for you. We know it's an heirloom. We'll go get it for you. And this sets off alarm bells, which don't necessarily work as straightforward as the cops were hoping, because Ashton gets word basically that there's someone watching the lake. And so he's like, okay, well, I got to get rid of this watch. I know what I'll do. I'll go to the dance studio and frame it on Flash Rob. And when he gets there, our good friend Elsbeth is there. I do have to shout out her little play here. I thought this was great, of like, oh, I'm having a party. I'm learning how to dance. Will you dance with me? Knowing that Ashton was a former Yale cheerleader and likes to do this type of thing. I want to also mention that the music that was used in this scene is from the musical Chicago. So my theory on there being either musicals in the background is kind of holding up. We'll see.
Yeah.
If we get one more instance, then I'll call it real. But it causes Ashton to do a cartwheel in which the watch falls out. You go. What can you do?
This whole dance-off scene was very fun. I was worried throughout the episode we were going to kind of do Keegan-Michael Key, kind of like we did Retta. Like, you have this fantastic comedic actor or actress, and you're not going to really have them do anything that they're known for, do anything super fun. But the way Keegan was doing his dance moves, the way he was interplaying with Elsbeth, the way that he was, kind of really into it, was definitely a Keegan-Michael Key thing to do. So I really enjoyed that aspect. I was like, okay, yeah, that's what you get Keegan-Michael Key for, is to do these silly dances and to make them look fun and believable. And he does the cartwheel, and the watch falls out. I was like, that was a really good ruse and a really good way to kind of prove that he has to watch. Now, I think this could have been easily defeated though in the real world. Like if Keegan had just been, Ashton, I don't know, just like, I just took the watch back after the wedding to keep it safe. That could have torn the case apart altogether. But because they mentioned the watch to Ashton and he didn't say that, I think that's why they can say, like, oh, you had the watch. You didn't say you had the watch. We asked you about the watch. You said you didn't say you had it.
Right.
But I thought that was just I didn't think that was enough evidence to really arrest someone for the murder.
It was an arrest with panache, though. So,
sure.
that it did. Yeah, I thought this was an interesting little case. We did also learn, this was mentioned, and I apologize, do my due diligence, but at the wedding, there was some cell phone footage. And some cell phone footage that showed people from Chicago. Like, Elsbeth was able to recognize some of these people from Chicago. So I'm excited that this has kind of come up here, because I wonder how it's going to play going forward. But it seems like Chicago is getting closer and closer to Elsbeth as the season goes on. I did kind of look up Lester Wilkes, but I couldn't find a Lester Wilkes, but there was a Charles Lester on The Good Wife and The Good Fight. He's played by the guy from Princess Bride, and he was...
Oh, wasn't that Lamont Bishop's right-hand man or something?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't think Lester Wilkes is supposed to be anything real. And I don't know if just by her mentioning, like, oh, I've seen those bad guys from Chicago before, I don't know if that was supposed to be a real tie. I'm still waiting on a real Good Wife, Good Fight, tie-in to really get my, my mouth salivating for some good wife, good fight content. We haven't really gotten anything since the Kyriagos mention way
Like
back in
day
episode
one.
1. Yeah.
Like,
I'm just waiting for that. I'm just waiting for something concrete to be like, oh, that's so and so.
well, there was another case that was happening in both of these episodes, and that is the movement on the Wagner case. So, as we all know, Elsbeth is there to actually keep eyes on Chief Wagner because the DOJ thinks there's some corruption happening here. And Kaya is in a very tricky spot in the situation. Wagner has kind of put Kaya in the position of watching Elsbeth. And at the beginning of the episode, I didn't like how Wagner was like pressuring Kaya to like tell him something, but I did like the mention of like, hey, there's not a lot of us being Black people at the top of the ranks here. And so, there's a lot of pressure on us. It was kind of an intimidation tactic, but I did like that it was mentioned for the audience.
Yeah, I like that
That's
they were
kind of where I was.
I like that they were calling it out. I didn't like the fact that he was using it as kind of a manipulation tactic to be like, yeah, so you got my back, right? you got a brother's back, right?
Yeah.
We're similar, so you're gonna take me down, right? I was like, oh, okay, all right, Wagner, I see what you're doing.
Yeah. And in the middle of like figuring out what was going on with Vanessa, Elsbeth using her computer, and a text message comes in from Celentano basically saying like, hey, I'm in New York. We need to meet up. And Kaya sees this and uses her good instincts and follows Elsbeth to Central Park to meet Celentano and Wally.
Wally, we finally see the illustrious Wally. Now, did this do anything for for Kaya's reputation in your eyes? Like, all right, she knows enough to investigate. She knows enough to follow Elsbeth and find things out on her own. Like, because, Kaya's just kind of been kind of there this whole Elsbeth run. She hasn't really brought a lot to the investigations, but I did like that she knew enough to kind of spy on Elsbeth and to actually kind of succeed in getting that information.
Well, I think that like that case with the gala where she got the credit for that kind of like bolstered her confidence. And so I felt like I have seen a little bit of it. She's definitely not, getting leads and driving the investigation of certain things, but she is following her instincts here, which is something that she sees Elsbeth do all the time. Like that's all Elsbeth does is follow her instinct. So here she does. She's very cautious. She doesn't, make it obvious that she's there. She doesn't tip anybody. She wants to just kind of know for herself, which I think was pretty cool of the situation. Yeah. During this meeting in Central Park, we learn, of course, it was Flare All. Flare All is the Chub Hub of its time, I think. And we have a company that is avoiding cases by paying Wagner's foundation for getting out of cases. And everyone knows or like thinks that it's Wagner right away. And at this point, I'm like, I don't know. But in the next episode, we learn a lot more. But in this one, I was like, this is a little too convenient.
The allegation is that, Wagner's taking kickbacks to look the other way in sweatshops. But the theory seemed very theoretical. He's like, yeah, that's got to be what's happening, right? Like, you have no hard evidence. You're just out of the blue accusing Wagner of doing this. But like I said, we will see a little of hard evidence of our own coming up to that something fishy's going on. But
go ahead.
Yeah, but Wally himself, I was like, I just don't trust Wally. Like Wally seems kind of shady himself. I was like, why are we just outright trusting this guy? He seems really shady. I loved and that's part of what makes Elsbeth is her quirkiness. And I loved when she meets up with Celentano in the park. She crawls over the statue to just kind of meet with Celentano. I was like, see, that's why Elsbeth is Elsbeth, and that's why she is such a quirky, entertaining character, because she does these acts of kind of physical comedy to make her kind of stand out above everyone else. The way she pokes her head in, the way she she says things is part of what makes Elsbeth Elsbeth. But yeah, the whole Flare All of it, I'm just like, I don't know, seems shaky.
Yeah, we saw a little bit more of Elsbeth's quirkiness in the waiting room in episode 6, where she had her mittens on, but she had mittens that go through the coat and were swinging them and walking around and saying hi to everyone. So I love that Elsbeth is purely herself all of the time.
Yeah.
But at the end of episode 6, Jason, we see some money being exchanged under a bridge, which we know never good. Under
Only bad
bridge,
things
bad.
happen under bridges. Yeah, only
Yeah,
bad things
yeah.
happen there.
And money is being given. Was it the Flareall guy himself? I don't think it was himself.
He was the guy from the gala. I thought the Flareall guy from the gala.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, listen, I could be stereotyping all bald white men, but it definitely looked like that guy.
Okay. Yeah. So it was Flareall Man. Flareall Man giving money to the lieutenant and wanting to get stuff from Wagner, and the lieutenant says he keeps his hands clean. I'll let you know. Big red flag.
Yeah, sure, Noonan. Sure. Yeah, sure, Noonan. And I don't remember if I think I called that Noonan was some type of.
We talked about it, yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, yes, Noonan's one of the bad guys. I know it. And now, let's talk more about the case overall, because we do get a lot more info later.
Yeah, so I think Wagner's like kind of on Noonan's case a little bit, like especially in episode 7, because he invites Noonan in for some donuts, and in this conversation Noonan is very revealing about his motives for anything, really. We learned that he basically wanted to be Chief Wagner, like get the chief position, and says, but the culture, like we're both qualified, but the culture, what are you gonna do? And I was like, oh,
the old affirmative action, kind of defense for Noonan. And I just, if I didn't already hate Noonan, I hated him now a lot more when he said this crap.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I did like how at one point, I'm trying to find it in my notes, but at one point Wagner tells Noonan, like, don't let your insecurities hide your inabilities.
Ooh,
I was like, yep, that's
got him.
Yeah. So at this point, it's basically, at least in my mind, confirmed that Noonan is doing this all in Wagner's name. And the motive behind this is the fact that he is a white man that did not get a job, but the black man did. And that to be quite honest, am happy to see this here. I'm not happy about it because I never want it to happen. But one of the things I really liked about watching The Good Wife and The Good Fight is they did not shy away from social conversations and social issues. They talked about them and showed their impact in the real world. So this is kind of like a light version, especially compared to The Good Fight, which really dealt with a lot of that. But it is kind of a little light mention, CBS primetime version. We have to remember that like The Good Fight was only on Paramount Plus. It had a much, more gate-kept audience in that situation. So I am happy to see this conversation here, while I'm not happy with Noonan together.
Yeah, I enjoyed the back and forth, and I enjoyed like this is part of why you have Wendell Pierce in this type of role, and he gives a sort of gravitas to all the roles he's in. So the way that he responded to what Noonan was saying was very was very good. Was very good dialogue, very good. He played it extremely well, and and the Noonan of it all. Apparently, this is like Flareall is like Noonan's case, and Noonan has like all the stuff on it. And he's asking Noonan about, give me all the stuff on Flareall because this Celentano thing is getting hot. I'm not sure what the relationship is between Wagner and Celentano. Like, what does Wagner know that Celentano is on this? Like,
I think like the Department of Justice had to like the consent decree comes from a court case. So I'm assuming that Celentano had to talk to Wagner and say, hey, we're going to send this Elsbeth person. And they may go way back. Like they may go, it seems like Wagner knows a lot of people, talks to a lot of people, I don't know. And Celentano may have come from New York. Maybe that's what we'll find out. But I think he kind of said to Celentano, like, okay, we have to have a consent decree, but send me a good one. And he was like, well, I can send you a good one that's really a good one, but will not look like they're on it.
And come to think of it, Wagner does know of Wally. He knows that this is an issue Wally's trying to bring forth. So he probably knows about Flareall and the allegations. So yeah, that makes sense. I love the way that this was played, and the interplay between Wagner and Noonan was really good.
Yeah, it was also interesting because before the scene in episode 6, when Elsbeth comes back from the park Elsbeth is like the worst at like keeping a secret. I don't know if that's the true thing, but how she handled kind of like letting Wagner know. Because I think at this point, especially in episode 6, very clearly in episode 7, but at this point, I think Elsbeth knows that Wagner knows that she's on to something in
Yeah.
outside of her usual murder case things. So she comes back from Central Park. It's basically like, they were talking about corruption.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, corruption. The security guard would get kickbacks and that would be bad. And the way that Captain Wagner reacted to this, and Wendell Pierce like just gets up from his desk and walks closer and closer to Elsbeth and reminds Elsbeth, like, hey, I got your son a job. Some people could think that you are being corrupt here.
And that in and of itself still is really weird to me, because it seems like he did that to cover his butt. But why does he think he needs to cover his butt? I think was my question of that whole thing.
I wonder if he knows about the flare-all of it all, but can't prove it, because he's always about hard evidence, right? Like he's always saying to Elsbeth, like, and I know he's like a cop and like that's the thing, but he's like, out of everyone there, he's like, show me some proof, like show me proof, show me proof. So I wonder if he's trying to protect his wife. And
see, I don't think he knows his wife. I don't know if he knows his wife is in on it yet. I still don't get that feeling from Wagner.
I don't know. Do you think that Noonan is talking to his wife about?
I think
Claudia knows. Even though she's all class.
Yeah, I think Claudia is deep into this. I think she's up to her elbows in this, because in order to funnel the money into the foundation, you need someone that is in control of the foundation's books, purse strings. I think that person is Claudia. I think Noonan is the person that does the dirty work on the ground, and Claudia is the one that helps funnel it through the charity, launder the money through the charity.
Yeah. One more thing on the Noonan Wagner conversation of it all. I liked, again, that this was in the show, but hated listening to it when he said about yesterday, when I'm not myself until I had my coffee. No, there's no excuse at any time for that type of language. So I'm just I wanted to throw something in my TV, but again, happy that was in there as an example of something.
Yeah, you mentioned, Wagner says, don't let your insecurities hide your inabilities. It's like, yeah. You tell that racist SOB.
Yeah, exactly. And it turns out, we'll talk a little bit about the party in a minute, but Elsbeth is having a housewarming party. And at the end of this, we see Elsbeth get a phone call from Celentano and move away from the party itself. And Wagner like looks at Kaya like, hey, and Kaya's like, I don't know what to do here. And so he goes and confronts Elsbeth in the situation. I thought it was great because we learn that Wagner was onto her and also knows that it's not him in this situation.
And it's a great moment because everyone is being open and transparent. Wagner tells her, like, listen, I think Noonan's doing something dirty in my name. And Elsbeth's like, well, that's not good. That ain't good, bro. And I love when, Wagner goes, I based my whole career on trusting people. And I think I've messed up. And Elsbeth says, well, I base everything I do on my gut and instinct. I was like, wow, this is just a moment of where everyone is kind of like, all the cards are on the table. Everyone's saying what's up, what's it going to be. And, I love Wagner walks in. He's like, listen, don't answer that phone. I know it's Celentano. He's like, I thought I knew who I could trust, but I'm not sure. And Elsbeth says, listen, I go with my gut and my heart. I'm not sure either. And I love that, Elsbeth is using her gut and her heart. And I think she's known all along, Wagner's not crooked, but something weird's going on here and we got to figure it out. So I do like that now she has the information in her pocket of what's really going on here. I think, much like all the other cases in this show, maybe next episode we start with Elsbeth being in the police station and looks at Noonan. She's like, yep, I got it. Like I know everything about the case now. It's you. I know exactly what you did, and I just need to prove it now.
Another beautiful moment coming out of this case to me was when Kaya recognized what spot she's in and asked Elsbeth like what
Mhm.
is going on, because she didn't want to have to keep spying on Elsbeth. She didn't want to have to, that's her friend, and she
Yeah.
trusts her as her friend, and kind of says to Elsbeth like, what is going on? And I also like when Elsbeth told her the truth, that Kaya's confused and doesn't know what to do, but Elsbeth reassures her like, I'm with you on this. We will figure this out. And I think that also told Kaya that while this is why I'm here to investigate Wagner. I don't
Yeah.
think that there's anything really here. The relationship between the two of them really did bloom, I think, between these two episodes. And we do see I love the gift she brought to Elsbeth's BYOB, the B is anything party, housewarming party, and is looking for Kaya to like help her interior decorate her home. They're really like leaning on each other, which means that there's probably going to be something that breaks that up in the future. But for right now, I'm enjoying it.
I mean, I think they'll be fine. Well, we didn't mention this too much when we were talking about the case, but when Elsbeth and Kaya go to the like strip club to
Yes.
to like do some illegal recon, I love that. I love how they played that whole conversation where Kaya's like, "Yeah, I am this is gonna be my new mother-in-law. We just want to try out some strippers," and how the interplay between them was so great and so fun. The chemistry is definitely there between those two.
The interplay was great, but how awkward was that? Like,
That was weird. It was like I just
like
wanted to try out some
such a weird
strippers
situation.
to make sure that my man's gonna be good to me. I was like, okay, I don't know if you get that every day. That was interesting, and I did like how we get more information about Elsbeth and her family in that way, where Elsbeth says,
Mhm.
I would love to be your mother-in-law. Kai's like, well, I don't know if that's really going to be a thing with Teddy now, is it? And this is where we find out that Teddy, is gay. And interesting enough, we also find out Teddy doesn't have the best picker when it comes to partners. And I was like, is this like something that
I
we're going
think
to pick up
something's gonna
later?
happen.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, what's up with that? Because that was an interesting little tidbit to drop in the middle of this.
Yeah, I picked up on that too. I was like, "Oh, she's telling us something here.
Mm-hmm.
Something is bigger." We also learned there was a funny moment where like my husband did this, and everyone was like, "You're married?" She's like, "I am." No, I got divorced.
Oh yeah, and something else we didn't really mention, Donnelly,
Yes,
the
from Third Watch.
detective from Third Watch, shows back up here and is very much a different kind of character than we saw before. She's much more like she's like a little self-deprecating. She's got a little more humor in her. She doesn't really clash with Elsbeth. She more just I don't know. She kind of just lets Elsbeth do her thing. She's not as crotchety as some of the other detectives we've seen at this point. She was in her first appearance, but now I think of all the detectives, she's like, yeah, go ahead, do whatever you want to do.
I would love to see this be like the squad that goes out, because it was really fun to see them all interact. And I liked how Donnelly was like, this case, it's bringing up stuff for me. Like
Yeah,
it was really good. And I don't know, I know we're not going to see her every single episode, but I would not mind seeing Detective Donnelly multiple times.
yeah, and I thought it was a good kind of transition into being like, oh, Elsbeth, you actually know what you're doing. I'm not going to, crap on you or be crotchety the whole time. I know you're good, so I'm going to let you do your thing.
And Wagner had to pull Elspeth back a little bit. I think Donnelly was giving her a little bit too much room, because Wagner had to tell Elspeth, like, Donnelly takes the lead. Like, don't.
Donnie was pretty much like, no, 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 you got it. Like, please take it, do your thing. I don't just whatever.
I'll take notes.
Yeah, for real.
But what did you think of this housewarming party? Elspeth finally has a house. She's a true New Yorker.
I just thought it would be a little more fantabulous. Like maybe she hasn't had time to put her touch on it, but it just
No,
wasn't like it wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be wildly decorated. I thought it was going to be something unique and quirky, but it's just kind of normal.
I think that it being a project for her and Kaya, like, I think we're going to see a lot of like cases discussed while painting. Like,
Yes,
it's
that'd
going to
be
give
great.
them a place to like have conversations that's not in the office or at Kaya's place. So I see that in the future. I did love how like everybody was there. Like, there were so many people that we've seen in previous episodes. It was a fun little
I
reunion of sorts.
I want to talk about that too because I did you who did you recognize among the party goers?
The
Because
DJ guy, the
what's the DJ
bus
guy
guy.
from? Where
The
was the
DJ
DJ
guy
guy
was
from?
from the Jane Krakowski episode because he was the son of the lady who got. He has a DJ business, but it fell
That
apart in
was
the
him?
pandemic. Yes.
Oh my gosh. I thought the guy was like bald. This guy had like curly hair.
No, it's the same guy. And then
Oh,
the bus
okay.
guy was there. Bus guy was
The
there.
bus guy
Uh,
I recognize. The
Capri was in
intern.
the back. Capri was back
Oh, I didn't
there.
even recognize her. And that was from the same episode. Show you how good my memory is. The intern from the Housewives episode was
Intern from the
there.
Housewives episode
The
was there.
baker
Yep.
guy. Who was the who was the guy with the baked goods? He said he got a discount from his job. I was like, have we met this guy before? I honestly
Oh,
don't
I'm
remember him.
blanking. I'm blanking.
Yeah, I did not pick up the DJ guy from the other episode. I did not clock that at all. Of course, I clocked the bus guy because he pretty much
I
came in and was like, in case you forgot, I was the bus guy from episode 1.
like walking around with a microphone, but also I loved how like housewives lady it paid in intern and bus dude might be a thing now. Like I just
Yeah.
love how they're like together, and I love how fast like Capri being there shows how fast Elsbeth makes friends and how fast that people trust her, because like she was able to get Capri to come to this party and show up and talk to other people, and like you're saying, like we literally just met her in this. The theme for this party is BYOB, and Kaya brought some bee hooks, some hooks with bees on it for her tote bags, which I thought was very thoughtful. And then Chief Wagner brought from Claudia beluga whale caviar, another sort of red flag in my opinion.
Why is that?
It's just too fancy.
Too fancy.
It's like it's
shows you got a little too much money.
Yeah, it's like, let me just remind you.
Speaking of her tote bags, did we see a lot of tote bags in these 2 episodes? Yeah. Has my mind
Jason,
just
are you
blocked out
watching
the
the
tote
show?
bags?
Yeah.
Has my mind blocked out the tote bags now? Like, do I just not pay attention to them now because they're just a part of her at this point?
They are a part of her. Yeah, they don't make as much of it. Like in Good Wife and Good Fight, they would make a lot more comments around them, or she would have to be like, hold on, let me collect my things, and then she'd like take time doing it. But now she's just like basically walking around with them and not necessarily drawing attention to them.
I just feel like she did a lot of work, of action work. So I feel like when she's dancing, of course she doesn't have the tote bags there, so maybe that's why I'm erasing them out of my mind.
Well, she was driving a golf cart. She was doing lots of things, getting plastic surgery. Yeah,
action-y shots. So maybe that's why I've taken them out of my mind. So I mean, that party felt almost like a season finale party.
Hey,
I
had to check the episodes.
Past guest stars from other episodes come back.
I had to check, and I wonder if that's like if it's a signal to the audience that we're like wrapping up this intro like vibe of the show, and maybe we're going to build into some more intense things. Again, we have to remember this is a CBS proper show. We're not necessarily going to go super fast, and we're not necessarily going to go super deep, but I feel like putting that kind of vibe here, and the question that Wagner asks Elsbeth at the end is kind of signaling like maybe the end of Act 1 is complete and we're moving into Act 2 of the story, because Wagner asks Elsbeth, like, the question is, whose side are you on?
And who does she tell? Like, I'm on the side of the truth. She says that to somebody.
That's what she says to Kaya when Kaya asks, like, whose side am I supposed to be on?
Oh yeah, you're supposed to be on the truth side. Yeah, so I think that's Elsbeth. That's Elsbeth's answer, pretty much, is going to be to Wagner. I think. I'm wondering if, because we have 3 episodes left in the season, so I'm wondering if the next 3 episodes will primarily focus on aspects of the Wagner case, and that's, maybe she's focusing on that, or if we'll stay with our crime of the week type of vibe as we see different. I mean, every episode has delved into a different like industry. Like we've seen New York real estate, we've seen tennis, we've seen plastic surgery. So that was very interesting. So yeah, I'm wondering what's coming down the pike and how we'll handle the overall Wagner of it all now that we have so much more information. All the characters have more information about what's going on. Wagner, Kaya, and Elsbeth all seem to be on the same page now. So I'm wondering if it's going to be more of a trio with those 3 in the last 3 episodes, rather than being kind of on different paths.
I think Noonan becomes the center of the story. Like it might be that Noonan's the crime A of this episode, and then we'll still have like a crime of the week, but it might not necessarily be as long or as, you know, hard to prove or something like that along the way. Because even in episode 7, like by the time the arrest happened at the studio, there still was the party. Like there was more after the arrest that we've seen. So I think we're gonna see that creep up a little bit. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if the next episode opens with a crime. And that will kind of, I think, tell us the way in which we're going.
My gut tells me that they'll stay with the formula because CBS loves a good formula. So I think we'll stay with the kind of opening that we've gotten. But maybe we'll slowly over time we'll devote more time to the Wagner of it all. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the season finale deals with Noonan / Claudia as the primary criminals of the episode.
Yeah, I'm with you. What would you have brought to the party?
Oh man, BYO buffalo wings is what I would have brought.
Ooh, nice.
100%.
I'd probably bring baklava just because it's a funny word. That's basically it.
Yeah, I think buffalo wings is going to be my go-to answer. And I'm only going to bring enough for myself. I brought my own. You all can't have any.
Well, it did say bring your own. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Exactly.
That does it for me here. Jason, anything else to add?
Yeah, listen, hey, this is our 3rd episode. We're out there now. We're on the interwebs. If you're listening to us on whatever platform you're listening to us on, if they have a rating mechanism, we would love it if you rate us. Spotify, you can give 5 stars. Apple Podcasts, you can give 5 stars and also leave a review. So we would really appreciate it if you're out there, you enjoyed what you heard, to give us that rating, give us that review, and just tell us how much you enjoyed the show, what you enjoy about the show. If you didn't like it, my suggestion would be just don't listen anymore. You don't need to leave a rating or review in that case.
It works out really well. Like if you just don't.
Yeah. Oh yeah. If any of you out there like what you're hearing, want to give us some props, want to give us some love, we would love to hear from you in that regard. Otherwise, you can find me on the interwebs on Twitter at JAYR1085. Right now, as far as podcasting, this is my gig. Married at First Sight, the season is over. We're waiting on an announcement for the premiere of the next season, so me and Asia can get started podcasting about that. But right now, this is where you can find me. Marissa, what's going on with you? Where can people find you? Where can people interact with you?
You can find me on Instagram and Threads. I feel like I'm like the only person that's doing that. Although I'm taking my Twitter break for a minute. At It's Me, Marissa G, on both of those platforms. And in my bio in that, you can find a link to my blog, which I'm writing about television. I recently started rewatching Felicity from the good old days of the CW, and also J.J. Abrams, which I still am flabbergasted that that's where he started, but it got us to Alias and then everything else. So you can find out more about that there. And then otherwise, yeah, I'm here.
All right. As always, cut the baloney. Call Tassioni.